Podcast. I'm Spencer Scott Holmes,
And I'm Cisco Garcia.
and today Ryan Dunnigan won't be here. He decided he didn't want to show up, so it's just going to be us two, and we're going to be talking about 007 films.
The greatest of the great.
Well, speaking of 007, there's the new one coming out, but there's a lot of other movies I'm really excited about, and I have no idea where else to put this in, but I want to explain some of these really cool movies coming out. And I'm going to start with one that just sounds really sweet. There's one called Lincoln, and it's Steven Spielberg's new movie. And it's about the last, I think 2 weeks or 4 weeks of Lincoln before he died.
Okay.
And that's what the movie's about, and that just sounds really cool because, Steven Spielberg, he did War Horse last year, I guess, but
There seems to be a lot of these Lincoln movies coming out right now. I mean, with that
the
Vampire
Vampire
Hunter.
Hunter.
I mean, this is probably a little bit of a change from Lincoln
And
the
then,
Vampire Hunter.
You know what?
But
There's
still.
another Lincoln movie. I think it was made by Roland Emmerich. No, was it him? Oh, I don't know. I thought there was something else kind of similar like that.
Yeah.
Then there's another movie called The Master, which is by Paul Thomas Anderson, the guy who did Boogie Nights.
Yeah.
And he hasn't made a movie since There Will Be Blood.
Okay.
So that one looks pretty sweet too. I'm looking forward to that. And Robert Zemeckis actually has a new movie, and guess what? It's not CG.
It's not CG. He hasn't gone full robot yet.
No, it's called Flight. So it's got Denzel in it, Denzel Washington.
Oh, nice. He's a good actor.
Then there's another movie that sounds really cool called Killing Them Softly, with
What?
Killing Them Softly.
Oh, okay.
With Brad Pitt.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it just looks like Brad Pitt. He has a gun. He's gonna kill.
You know, Brad Pitt's good in almost everything I've seen him in, so he can't really have any complaints there.
No. So and then there's Argo. That's Ben Affleck's new movie.
Oh, I saw it.
About in the 70s, with they're kind of like in the CIA and they have to investigate cross the borders, but they hire a fake movie crew.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And then they're really gonna make a real movie out of it. It's supposed to be based off a true story.
Oh.
So that's gonna be pretty sweet.
Nice. I always like Ben Affleck's movies. I mean, ever since he started directing, he's one of those guys that you have to appreciate what he's done. I mean, a lot of people give him flack for his acting skills, but I think he's a great actor, and some of his directing
As a
films
director,
are
he's
really great.
fantastic.
Yeah.
The Town was amazing.
That's right.
And then there's Skyfall, obviously, coming out November 9th. They always come out around my birthday. I'm always excited about that.
That's right.
And look at this picture. That picture actually kind of makes me a little bit more excited about 007.
I know, it's going back to the old style. I mean, you see the Aston Martin there. You see him in the suit. He doesn't look like he's trying to be the Quantum of Solace Bond, which I've got to say was probably my second least favorite Bond film. But others had their own opinions about that. But
That almost is my least favorite Bond film when I think about it. I mean,
I don't know.
the action in it's good. Don't get me wrong. That's really what sells it, is the action.
Yeah.
I just never think the story's just...
Oh, yeah, I'm behind
I
you
don't know,
with that.
yeah.
It's very muddled and confusing. It's one of those stories that when you watch it, you have to think, what happened in this movie? I just remember cars driving around fast and Bond saying something and a Bond girl. I don't even remember the Bond girl, what she looked like now. All I remember
She had a scar on her back.
Oh, that's the one. Or the Casino Royale.
No, that was actually in Quantum.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But the one thing is, even though I like Casino Royale a lot, I think that's a real good movie. It's a very strong movie, and as far as the movie goes, it's actually, you can't really complain really about it at all.
Yeah.
But the one thing I think that movie should have been is it should have been a prequel instead of a reboot.
Absolutely.
How cool would that have been if it just took place in the 50s?
Yeah, that's what the problem was. It felt like it had that 50s vibe, playing poker, the old-fashioned, people dressed up nicely, but the fact is, it wasn't. They made it into a contemporary piece, and it just didn't work very well. The juxtaposition between the two themes just didn't work very well, in my opinion.
Well, strangely enough, you could actually really have fixed... There's only a couple of things that kind of make it feel modern. It's just those couple cars that he's driving, like the Ford.
Yeah, the Ford, that was a completely...
And there's,
but if you... an advertisement
But
stunt.
the way that the movie was kind of was, because just the locations it took place at, they weren't very modern looking. They looked a little bit classic.
Yeah.
I mean, he had the Aston Martin, so that kind of gave you the feel that it was, even though that wouldn't make sense, even though he didn't get that till the third movie, but...
But it could have been set, like, in Cuba in 1950, Batista era, pre-Castro. That's what it felt like. Other than those cars, it felt like that.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a cool movie, but that one thing, it just, I don't know, I guess as a, James Bond fan forever, it really sort of takes you... I don't know, it's that reboot thing. I'm just never a big fan of the reboot.
Neither am I. They were trying to pan for a new audience of 007, and I understand they're trying to keep that, drive alive, but still, you want to pander to the old fans still. And they did a decent job with Casino Royale. As I said, it had a great feeling, but they could have done things better, but they wanted to pander to a larger audience, which I don't blame them for, but it upset me a little bit, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, I always feel you reboot a franchise that's not that good anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
And even though I know some people don't like Die Another Day, really the first 2/3 of Die Another Day is actually a really good movie.
You know, I liked the beginning, him in prison. I thought that was kind of a cool stunt.
And I like the part in Cuba.
Yeah, in Cuba. And you never see Bond in like a scraggly beard or in jail like that. I mean, you see him in jail, but not to the extent of what, 3 months he was in jail, almost a year.
It
Was
was
it
9 months.
9 months? Yeah, that was
3 months.
three,
Not
three,
that long of a
yeah,
sentence.
3 month sentence. God, that's terrible. No, but yeah, he was in there for a long time, and it felt kind of cool. Like, wow, I've never seen this before. Again, great start, but that's what happens to movies a lot nowadays. You have a great start, but all of a sudden goes to shit. It's like the opposite of 70s movies. In the 70s, you had movies that were so boring for the first half hour, and then they got really good. You know, it was
You
kind of
get
a
things like
reverse.
Halloween that actually literally take over an hour before anything really happens. But
Exactly.
after that point, though, it's a really good movie.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of films nowadays, it's the other way around, and same with video games too. Sometimes great beginning, great half hour, great first hour of the game or whatever, but then it just gets a little weird. They don't know how to end it. They have a lull in the midpoint, and then it's just kind of it goes off from there.
Well, that one, I think they almost had that thing that X-Men was popular, Spider-Man was popular, so they kind of made that villain almost slightly superhero-like.
Yes, they did.
You know, he had sort of that feeling. Like I thought the ice cap. You know, really the only parts that really kind of to me bother me sort of is you get the crappy CG when he's surfing or windsurfing sort
Yeah,
of,
I remember that.
and then the laser beam. Some people always thought they're like, oh, that. I'm like, I don't know. I guess laser beam from space doesn't seem that too far fetched to me. I guess the
Yeah,
suit was kind of strange.
it was. Now, one thing that really bothered me about the movie was Halle Berry. I don't like her as an actress very much. I don't think she's very
I've never
attractive,
been a big
and
fan.
I don't think she did a good job in that movie. It felt like, oh wow, she just won the Academy Award. Let's put her in this movie and sell $1 million. I mean, and make $1 million. Excuse me. But
Let's
it
just
didn't.
sell millions
Let's
of
sell
dollars
millions
to
of dollars.
everybody.
Well, that's what they
When
did.
you show up to the 007 movie, you get $5.
Exactly, exactly. Now, I felt like to an extent they should have done that for how crappy that movie turned out, in my opinion. But then again, you have your own opinion about it. But it was one of those movies. It's in the series. As a Bond fan, I respect it, but I have no plans in the near future to watch it again. I have it in that collector stuff that I bought. Other than that, maybe for reference if I have to go back and see something. But I can always just appreciate the classics much more than that film, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. You know, I watched it actually only about a year ago, and I actually had a lot more appreciation for it. Strangely enough.
Now, I remember that villain that you were talking about earlier, the superhero like villain. I thought that was an interesting concept, having a guy who just couldn't die, or he wanted to he could die, but he wanted to live as long as he could by staying up at super late.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
there's a
that was
lot of cool things. See,
interesting.
that's the thing about that movie, and I think
Not
some
ever sleeping, you
is
know.
people took like three things that weren't that great with it, and they just blamed the entire movie. Like, nope, the entire movie's not good.
Yeah.
But really, there's a lot of good points in that movie, and I always feel like I like to defend that movie quite a bit. I mean, I don't think it's the greatest movie by any means, but I just think that they actually did a lot of things that were quite different in it, and it's still overall pretty good movie. But speaking of
Exactly.
Pierce Brosnan movies, let's just talk about Pierce at the moment.
Yeah, let's talk about Pierce Brosnan.
Now, out of all the Pierce Brosnan movies, which one's your favorite?
Now, of course, my favorite would have to be Goldeneye.
No, Goldeneye. That movie is such an impressive movie.
That movie, you took Bond, you had that little bit of lull with Timothy Dalton, which I like the movies, but I think the general fan base has said they didn't like those movies. But you had that lull, and then you come out with this Bond in 1995, completely back to the classics, a great Bond. It just felt natural. Pierce Brosnan was very natural in the role, and you get a great movie out of it. You go back to Russia. You have the Soviet battle. I mean, it's post-Soviet era, but you
It
still have
starts
that.
out actually as the very
Oh, that's right.
tail end of
The
the
tail end
Soviets.
of the Soviet
Great
Union.
intro.
Yeah, great intro. And it just felt like a great, complete movie to me. It had some great villains, had some great locations, and of course, made an amazing video game for the Nintendo 64, which we talked about in an
It was
earlier
amazing.
podcast.
That was the very first Bond movie I saw in theaters. I saw it in 1995 when it came out. Actually, at our old movie theater, the old Cinema 3
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
or Cinema 5, I guess.
yeah, it was Cinema 5. But yeah, I actually didn't see that one in theaters. I saw it when it came out on video. My first was Tomorrow Never Dies. But going back to GoldenEye,
Part where he's jumping up the dam that was pretty darn impressive in theaters. I remember that was kind
yeah.
of I probably at that point as a kid you probably only seen like maybe 10 movies or so in theaters. Not a whole lot by that point.
One thing I really liked about the movie was the character of Boris. Now, that actor, I like him a lot. Myself, I do a lot of theater, so I really like some Broadway actors, and I appreciate people who have worked in theater themselves. And Alan Cumming is one of those actors. And when you think about it, he's just so you can't forget about him in that movie. Him, in the computer lab going, "I am invincible." I mean, one of the greatest characters in the world in any Bond film, in my opinion. funny.
I love Boris.
I had a soft spot for him, even though he was kind of that guy that everyone thought he was a jerk because he betrayed Natalia. But you know, I didn't want him to die in the end. I didn't want him to freeze to death. I wanted him to live. But that's what happens in Bond movies. Very few villains actually live.
No, unless you're Jaws, who becomes like a personal favorite.
My personal favorite Bond enemy, and one of my favorite actors of all time, Richard Kiel.
He's amazing. He lives practically next door to us. Lives in Yosemite.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, I actually wrote to him one time, and he got back to me. He signed his autograph to his autobiography, sent it to me, and gave me a picture. Very nice guy, and yeah, he comes to Twainhart from time to time. I know I see his picture in some pizza places around here.
Yeah, you see him they have him at all kinds of places. You'll see a picture of Richard Kiel there.
Yeah, so shout out to Richard Kiel, great man, great human being, great actor. Anyway, let's go back to some other Pierce Brosnan Bond films. Let's go to Tomorrow Never Dies.
Tomorrow Never Dies was really big, I guess, for me, for the fact that I saw GoldenEye, and I was watching all the other ones off TV at that point. But Tomorrow Never Dies was the next big one for me to see in theaters.
Yeah, that was the first one I saw in theaters, and I liked it. I really did. Now, something that a lot of people don't really know about that movie is the enemy in that movie. I forgot the actor's name, but the man who's the English actor who in Pirates of the Caribbean, he was the main bad guy in the movie.
He owns the press in that one.
Yeah, he is supposed to be based off of the character of the real life person of Rupert Murdoch, the owner of Fox News.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people don't know about that, but I think that was an interesting thing, taking somebody like that, someone who I think is pretty evil, and making him into an evil enemy on the Bond film. Great idea. And that was cool. He had that submarine. I remember that he was blocked by radar.
No, that was really cool. So they actually they took that sub or one similar to it, and they just decommissioned it for the military. Actually, one kind of like that.
Oh, they did.
So they're going to turn it into like a museum, and they're wondering. Actually, no, they're deciding between two things. They're wondering if they're just going to sell it for scraps or turn it into a museum.
They better turn to a museum. I'll pay to see that.
I know, who doesn't want to see one of those? It's like when they kind of take aircraft carriers and destroy them. It's like, why? You turn it into a museum, make some profit off of it.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a few aircraft carriers in Hawaii that they have opened up to the public, and it's a really neat.
We got that one down in Alameda, right there, the USS Hornet.
Fantastic. Oh yeah, that's right, they do. Going back to Tomorrow Never Dies, great Bond movie. It went back to it was based in China. There's a few Bond movies in China, a few Bond movies in the Soviet Union, but I thought it was a very good movie. You had some recurring characters from GoldenEye, like what was his name? Jimbo. Hey.
Yeah, I remember what that guy's name was, but yeah, you get that guy.
Yeah, he was a great character. You had Valentine was in the next one. I don't think he was.
Yeah, he was in World's Not Enough.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously that was when you had Samantha Bond. She started out in GoldenEye, and then.
Yeah, let's talk about World's Not Enough. Now that one had Carmen Electra, is that right?
No, the character's name's Electra.
Electra. I always get that confused.
See, I can't remember what her name is, but Denise Richards played the other one. And she played
Christmas Jones.
Yeah, she was Christmas Jones. She played the scientist, which a lot of people kind of like, Denise Richards. She's married to Charlie Sheen, and she's a scientist.
And the other character's name was Electra, that's right.
It was Electra, and that always threw people off.
She was the bad girl, yeah. Now that movie, the one thing I remember was a very cool action scene when they were going in the pipeline.
Oh, yeah.
And
they're going down like Super Mario Brothers.
Exactly. Yeah, that was pretty awesome.
There's some kind of cool action scenes in that one too, because I also liked when they're going skiing down and he pulls the ripcord and then the suit inflates into a gigantic blow up ball. And...
That's right, and that's the movie that Q retires in, isn't it?
Yep, and that starts off with another great action scene too, of the little Q boat.
Yeah, the Q boat, and. Now, I gotta say this right now. I feel so bad for Desmond Llewellyn. This guy worked his whole life. He was in every Bond movie with the exception of one or two, and then he passes away right after that movie.
Well, he retires in the movie and then just ends up actually dying, which is so sad.
A very, very sad thing. Great actor, Desmond Llewellyn, but it did introduce a great actor, John Cleese.
I know, I really think John Cleese should have been in Casino Royale and stuff. I guess people obviously didn't like him enough.
Classic actor. Everyone knows him from Monty Python, but he did a great job in World's Not Enough. Now,
he's also in Die Another Day too.
He was. Now, the main enemy in World Is Not Enough was the man who was an ex-prison mate. He had the bullet stuck in his brain.
Yeah, so he couldn't feel pain anymore.
Yeah, he couldn't feel pain, and it took him a long time to die. I just thought he was like a retarded guy who wouldn't die.
That's kind of sort of the same thing.
Basically. Okay, so we've talked about all the Pierce Brosnan
So what Bond
movies.
you want to talk about next?
Let's go. Let's go back to Timothy Dalton, the little bit of the forgotten Bond. Not so much as some other ones. But he was definitely the Bond that was underappreciated. I think he was a great Bond villain. Now he had two movies. Well, the first one we'll talk about is my favorite, License to Kill. That was
the second one.
Second one. But let's talk about that one first.
Okay.
Yeah. The first one was
The Living Daylights.
Living Daylights, but License to Kill was that movie that was based in Cuba partly, based
Mhm.
in Florida, and it was interesting
The
because
cool thing is they really do something different with Bond in that movie, which is kind of
yeah,
cool.
you do, yeah. They had that part where they were on the plane, right, and he was trying to break out of the plane or something.
Mhm.
Yeah, and there was that shark pit. I remember that. That was interesting. There was
The semi-truck chase.
yeah, there was the cocaine dealer who was the guy from the Goonies, which I thought was always really cool. And of course, one of the greatest things is Wayne Newton has a cameo in that movie.
Yep.
He had a mustache. Like, hey, Wayne Newton's a bad guy. That's awesome. Now, something about that movie that's so disturbing but so cool is that it probably has the most disgusting death in any Bond movie. When the man is stuck in the he's stuck in the what is it called? The airtight container in the ship,
Mhm.
and the pressure's turned off, and he sort of just implodes.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
remember
his
that.
eyes bug out and his
His
head blows.
explodes. That was
Yeah,
awesome.
that was really cool. But I remember seeing that like, oh my god, is this a Bond movie? Like, am I watching Starship Troopers or am I
Well,
watching a
whenever
Bond
they
movie?
have a Bond who's not kind of like the main Bonds, that's when they decide like, okay, we got somebody else. We can really experiment on our movie. If it doesn't pan out, whatever, we can always kind of like just kind of forget about it. Because with
Yeah,
the George Lazenby movie, that one is such an experimental Bond because they didn't. It's like we don't have Sean Connery at the moment, so
yeah,
let's just try all kinds of new things.
yeah,
I mean, that movie's almost shot like an independent movie of like the '60s, kind of like an Easy Rider style, kind of a
yeah.
little
It
bit more
is.
handheld, quick, very quick edits, interesting shots.
Mhm.
And that's what I like about that. That's actually one of my favorite ones is On Her Majesty's Secret Service.
That's probably the most forgotten Bond film, or one of the most forgotten. Definitely the most forgotten Bond. A very interesting story. Of course, if you have not seen that movie, there's a little bit of a spoiler alert, but Bond does get married in that film, and then his wife dies. Very sad, and probably the only really sad ending to any Bond film that I've
Hmm.
seen. Great movie.
So they tried a lot of new things with that one.
They did. They really did. And George Lazenby, he wasn't even really an actor. I know he was in Australia. I think he was a car salesman or something. And
Hmm.
then he decided to audition, or somebody found him. They're like, "Hey, let's put you in a Bond movie. And we have, we don't have Sean Connery on our contract right now. You want to come out?" And he did it. So kudos to him. He did a great job, and yeah, it was a great film.
No, that one's one of my. That's my top 5 favorites. Is that one?
Yeah. Let's go back to Timothy Dalton and let's go to his first appearance,
Living Daylights.
Living Daylights. You talk about that's your favorite one, so you do the
Well, that's
introduction
my
of this
favorite
one.
one out of those two.
Out of those two, yeah.
Yeah. That one's really cool. It's not the greatest Bond. It actually has one of my favorite Bond vehicles in it. The Aston Martin he has in it, the '80s version.
Yeah.
It's got the lasers on the tires.
Mm-hmm.
They improve it. It's got some missiles on it. That's such a cool car, even though it's only in it for like 15 minutes or something before he crashes it.
Yeah. Exactly.
But and then they go sledding down the hill in the cello case.
Oh, that's right, the cello case. Yeah.
That
That's
part's always kind of funny.
now that's one of those things about that movie. I don't really remember a whole lot about the movie, but I remember the Bond girl, and I remember having that cello and playing in
Yeah, I
the
think
Grand Symphony
I think she was
Orchestra.
like from Czechoslovakia or something like that.
Yeah, she was from the
Czech
Czechoslovakia,
Republic maybe.
or it's Czechoslovakia at that time. But yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, she was from that. Anything else to add about that movie?
Not totally off the top of my head. I haven't seen that one. It's been a little bit of time since I've seen that one.
Yeah, it has been quite some time too. So we've been going kind of back in time from the beginning a little bit. Now let's go. Let's
To
go.
Sean Connery.
Yeah, let's go to Sean Connery. Sean Connery, of course, the everyone thinks of him as the original Bond. He was not, but he was in many people's eyes the original Bond. Let's talk about his first Bond movie, Doctor No.
Which is amazing.
Yeah, Doctor No is my favorite Bond movie. Doctor No is a very simplistic movie. It was made in 1962 for a budget of $1 million. It introduced Sean Connery, of course. He's Scottish, or
Mhm.
yeah, Scottish actor. Everyone knows Sean Connery, of course, Mr. Sean Connery. That was a terrible impression. I'm sorry. I tried to do my best off the top of my head, but
That's okay.
I'll do better next
As
time.
long as you at least do something.
I try just to maybe it put that thought in someone's head that hadn't thought about it. Now, with Doctor No, of course, it was based in Jamaica, and you had the character of Doctor No who had his own island,
Mhm.
and
And
on
then
the
you had Ursula.
yeah, oh yeah, Ursula Andress was the first Bond
Bond
woman
girl.
coming out of the water. Everyone remembers her bikini with
The knife attached.
the knife attached. Yeah. Now and that was on Crab Key, the island they were at. Now the interesting thing about that movie is that You had Bond. You were introduced to Felix, of course, his sort of his, I guess you could say his sidekick, kind of his on field Q when Q was not there.
Yeah, but the before Q.
Before Q.
Now was Q's first one from Russia with Love?
Q's first, yes,
Yeah,
that was the first one he was in. He was not in Doctor No.
I know it wasn't Doctor No.
Yeah. Now Doctor No, the villain of Doctor No, was
Doctor No.
Doctor No. Yeah, was this Japanese, half Japanese, half American man who had metal hands, which I thought was really neat. He lived on his own private island, as I said, Crab Key, and for a good part of that movie, at least half the movie, Bond is traveling over the island, trying to be undetected, trying to find Doctor No's secret lair, and he does. It's underwater, and he's kidnapped but treated like a guest. And of course, having Bond, he has to destroy everything, and he ends the tyranny of Doctor No, who of course did not last to the end of the movie, and he falls into that pit of acid at the very end of the movie.
Very end of the movie.
And Bond escapes with Ursula Andress into that little paddle boat, and that's the end of that. The next Bond film
From Russia with Love.
From Russia with Love. Very, very good.
Now, have you played the video game from Russia with Love?
Yes.
And have you yet to see the movie? Really, that video game adds like so much to the story. I mean, it's still the same thing, but they add a lot of stuff to it that almost like throws it off.
Yeah, they do.
Like I remember because I hadn't seen from Russia with Love for a long time. I went back. I'm like, oh man, they really added stuff to that game. I mean, it's a video game. You got to add stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
that's actually it was such a strange choice for a game. I always thought too, because
Mhm.
it has kind of like there's action in that one, but it's not like copious amount of action in it. But
Yeah. Something that I loved about that movie is they actually got Sean Connery to do the voices there.
it's all older. It's just like, oh, Sean Connery, I'm older now.
Yeah, it was very weird.
It was very like slurry and.
Yeah.
But that's okay. That's cool though. We like that.
Now that movie had some great Bond villains. There was that one evil lesbian woman.
Yeah, that was like using awesome powers.
Yeah, who kicked people with the poisonous hooves that she had on her shoes. And then there was the man who kind of like the Aryan race, like Superman.
Yeah.
I forgot his name, but the one thing I remember about him is he was the same actor who played Quint in
in Jaws?
In Jaws. You don't recognize it, but he
yeah,
was.
that's true. Yeah.
And of course, that was what, at least 10, 15 years later.
Yeah.
But
yeah, probably about 10 years later.
About 10 years later, which is another great film, Jaws, of course.
Amazing.
Now, another thing about that movie is, I feel like it's a lot of people's moms' favorite movies. A lot of moms I've talked to have said,
they always like
I
From Russia
love
with
From Russia with Love. You know, it has a romantic story. It's great action, and it's a great movie. And I remember my mom talking about it, saying that it was her first Bond book that she read, and she really liked it. And it was the first Bond movie that she saw, and she will remember it to this day as being her favorite. Okay.
Then next comes the real big one.
Yeah, of course.
Goldfinger.
Goldfinger.
Which
Yeah.
introduces the Aston Martin, so we finally get the Bond vehicle in there.
Yes.
It's actually kind of the start of the gadgets. Kind of really comes in that movie.
Yeah, though Q was introduced in From Russia with Love, that was the first big action, big technology, big overblown Bond film where he really had a lot of technology.
That almost kind of sets up the main like Bond kind of premise.
Yeah.
Sort of compared to the first two before it. That's really where you start to almost get. You get the main big villain who's very charismatic.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, they already had the women from beforehand, but now you're starting getting the gadgets and the cars, and really what defines Bond really starts to happen in this one.
Now, the plot of that film was the character of Goldfinger wanted to make all of the United States gold reserve invaluable by completely radiating it by breaking into Fort Knox and putting that the nuclear device inside of there. That was really interesting because everything was based off gold in that movie. He had a golden car. He painted people gold. He killed them and then, he put them to sleep first and then he'd paint them and they'd suffocate. And interesting fact about that film is that was actually the first time that a laser was ever used. Ever.
Yep. If you're gonna have a laser, put it in a Bond movie. Put
it in a Bond film. A great line. Do you expect me to talk? No, Mr.
Bond,
I expect you to die. You know,
and slice your balls off with my laser.
Exactly. You know, you got this like ex-Nazi guy who only cares about gold.
And then you get a badass odd job.
Odd job. You know, with Harold Sakata, was that his name? I believe he was
Who?
a Hawaiian wrestler. I know
Yeah,
that.
that's what I remember him being.
Yeah, and he was Odd Job who had his. He was a little person, I guess you could say, and he had a hat, a bowler hat, where he'd throw it and chop people's heads off, or
Mhm.
or break their neck at least, chopping the heads off of
Mhm.
statues and things like that in that movie. And of course, he came to his terrible demise when he was electrocuted in Fort Knox. Very sad because I thought he was an awesome villain.
Yeah, he's one of those villains that's so cool. You almost wish he could reoccur.
Yeah.
He sort of reoccurs like in Last Action Heroes.
Yeah. And probably one of the most tongue-in-cheek Bond women ever,
Pussy
Pussy
Galore.
Galore. Of course, that was.
Because you know that's like somebody's real name.
Yeah, of course, people name people that. But I feel like out of all the Bond women, Bond had the strongest attachment to Pussy Galore. He had this weird attraction to her. She had some strange attraction to him, but you don't see in other Bond movies. They're playful together. He didn't just treat her like she was, some dumb bimbo like most of the Bond movies. He really cared about her, I believe, and it was just an interesting dynamic between the two of them. Great chemistry. I can't remember the actress's name off the top of my head, but she did a great job in that movie. I just remember she was part of the Pussy Galore's flying circus, where she was in charge of sending nerve gas over the troops stationed at Fort Knox and putting them to sleep for a few hours before Goldfinger could get in there and radiate the gold supply. Okay, well I think we've talked enough about that movie.
Yeah.
Let's go to
Thunderball. It has a
Thunderball.
great theme song.
Yeah, Mr. Tom Jones. His first, only Bond film, but actually was that no? It was the second time a man sang a
Yeah,
Bond
second from Marshal
Bond
Love.
song, but great song. The Thunderball theme song, and that was cool because you open the movie. It's at a funeral, I believe,
Mhm.
and Bond escapes in a jetpack, which for the 1960s, which was pretty awesome, I gotta say.
I love. There's actually, I think it's in Die Another Day. There's like that thing where he's looking at all this stuff and he's like, this thing still works.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right. It's in that for a brief second.
It's just like those little things in life.
Yeah, they're pretty neat. Now I love Thunderball because it has that underwater flair to it. Everything, that underwater theme to everything, and you have that villain with the eye patch.
Mhm.
Can't
Yeah,
remember his name.
they're pretty much the guy he was. Well, you have that guy who was made out to be in Austin Powers. That was another one they picked from. They mostly in Austin Powers they really picked from all the Sean Connery movies.
Yeah. Now, did he have a cat in that one in Thunderball where he
Uh huh.
was? Okay, that's what I thought.
Because that villain's in multiple Bond movies.
No. That's the one.
Oh, are you thinking of
from,
like
That's the one from You Only Live Twice. It was in a couple.
he's
Bond
in You Only
movies.
Live Twice and he's in Diamonds Are Forever.
Yeah.
He-
He.
I guess yeah, he's not in
No,
Thunderball.
it's a different one. But that's the same actor that's in Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, Thunderball, cool movie. Had that shark pit, as I
Mhm.
said, really neat. And yeah, and Bond had a great underwater battle scene at the end of that. And you drove a lot of boats. Yeah, can't really say much more about it except it's a great one. You got to see it.
No, that's a really cool one.
Yeah,
And then next is this is actually one of my all-time favorite ones. Is You Only Live Twice.
that's right. Now, You Only Live Twice was the first Bond film to be have that Asian flair.
The first one in Japan.
Was it Japan?
Yeah,
Okay.
that one's Japan.
Yeah. Now that movie, of course.
That one has such a great intro too.
Yeah,
because
Bond gets shot in a
yeah,
bed, and you're like,
Bond
what?
Bond is making love like always, and then next thing you know, a bunch of guys bust in, flip this bed all the way up into the wall, and then just
Exactly.
blast to death. And
And just blast him. Yeah.
I think it just goes straight to the music right there.
Yeah, you're like, oh, is the movie over? What's going on here?
It's not title, it's just the credits.
Now, You Only Live Twice. I remember having a lot of aerial action scenes. I remember
Because they have the little Nelly is
the,
in
the,
that.
the
thing.
little Nelly. That was really cool. Now, that was the movie that had that huge sound stage, right? Where they had the big set where it was almost like a volcano-looking set
Yep.
where people came down. Now, something interesting about that set I found out about later is that they could not find out how to light that set. They tried
Yes.
everything. And
So they hired somebody.
they hired
some
someone
secret guy.
who doesn't like to be named about this, but he's dead. So I'm sorry, Mr. Kubrick, but it's you.
Yeah, Stanley Kubrick lit it.
Yeah, Stanley Kubrick was able to light that for them. So I thought that was a really cool little addition, little hidden Easter egg about that movie. That was Stanley Kubrick's repertoire. Anything else to say about that movie?
No, that's a pretty good one. But next one would I guess it's on Her Majesty's Secret Service. But we already
Yeah,
talked
we
about
already
that.
talked about
Then
that.
you get the Diamonds Are Forever, which Litter Mountain gives this movie I think a 4-star.
I don't understand that. Now,
And it's one of those Bond movies. when you go to watch it, just like I don't know, the villains, you get like those two kind of weird guys, the guy balding, and
Yeah, the balding
there's like
guy.
these two like lame-o
They look
villains
like a
or
computer
henchmen.
nerd.
Yeah,
They remind me of like Bill Gates and his sidekick in the 70s or
like
something.
Bill
Like,
Gates and Steve
yeah,
Jobs.
Steve
They're like
Jobs. Like,
they're forced to work together now.
that's what it felt like. Like
These two.
and now it had a cool idea. It was based in Las Vegas, which is
It's
awesome.
cool.
Now they got Sean Connery to come back for a movie. He's probably like, oh, whatever, I'll come back and do another Bond movie. Now I loved that movie back in the day. You know, really cool. But now I watched it again, and I'm like, what, really? No, it's a little too corny, a little too tongue in cheek for me. One thing I do appreciate about the movie is it was the second movie with Shirley Bass doing the theme song. She did 3 of them, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
She did Goldfinger, and then she came back for Diamonds Are Forever. Diamonds Are Forever. I remember there being, was that the one that they were in the Zeppelin? I can't remember if that was the one, or they were in some sort of
No, I don't think that's that one.
train or no.
That I really had that one's the one of the Bond movies I have yet to see in like 4 or 5 years.
I remember him at a crematorium at one section. I thought that was kind of cool because he was being burned alive inside of a crematorium.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
That was an interesting little flair to it. It was able to be stopped in time, but of course, Bond can't die. But something about the movie, I just remember going back to the tongue-in-cheek stuff. It would be like you hit the guy and it would stop and freeze, and the guy would go or like it just felt like almost like they were adding comic book elements, which sounds cool. But then you watch it and you're like, no, this is just a little too corny for me.
I'd like to see that one again because I haven't watched it in so long, and sometimes like I don't know. Because I mean, obviously people really liked that one back in the day for some reason. I don't know. It has such high ratings, but
yeah. Now, okay, that's the end of the
Sean
Connery
Connery
segments for
well,
now.
actually,
For
technically, there
now,
actually is one more Sean Connery. Let's just get to that one.
Yeah, let's just go to that one really quick.
Now, this is like the bastard child of 007 movies because whenever you buy a 007 set, there's actually 2 bastard child movies of the 007 universe
Well,
that you
3.
don't get. I guess 3, but the other one's a
Yeah.
comedy.
Yeah.
So I guess that's a little bit different. But let's talk about the first bastard child.
Yeah, never say never again.
And I remember when I was a kid and I discovered this movie, I was like, what the fuck? There's a Bond movie? It doesn't come on regular like Bond marathons or anything like this.
Yeah, it would come on like once or twice, maybe on
you
Thanksgiving.
you wouldn't get it like in a Bond marathon. You just watch it like on like Stars or something, and it'd be like it would just be its own like separate thing.
Yeah, it was very strange.
And you're like, it's 007, it's mentioning it in the thing.
Yeah, but then
And Sean Connery's old, which I think is a really cool concept because kind of the concept is like it's almost like The Dark Knight Returns.
Yeah,
It's like what happens if like this guy's older now and
can't
has to
take
keep
his
doing this.
dry martinis or anything like that. Now, something I find interesting about that movie is that's the last time, to my knowledge, that you see Sean Connery with almost dark hair before he went bald.
Yeah.
He could have been wearing a hairpiece. I don't know, but
Yeah, 'cause he
after
went,
that
like,
he had
really
his
bald.
like balding gray hair on the side. Oh, Sean Connery, I'm really old. That was
The Rock,
after that
Sean
movie,
Connery.
The Rock, Sean Connery, that he's been in for the last 20 plus years.
Indiana Jones, Sean Connery.
Exactly.
Indy.
Indy, Junior. No, but
I lost him.
I've lost him. Now was that? Now, but that's odd though because now when was that movie made?
I think it's 1986.
86. Okay. Now when was the first Indiana Jones movie made?
First Indiana Jones movie was made in 1981.
Now that's okay. And when was Last Crusade made?
1991. No, 1989.
Okay, so that's a pretty big jump in looks from Never Say Never Again to the Last Crusade. Yeah, that's just strange. But anyway, yeah, that's a good movie. See it just to say you've seen a Bond movie, but it's not bad. I will not say it's
No,
bad.
it's a pretty good one. It's not the best Bond movie by any means, but
One,
it's not the bastard child that they treat it like.
yeah. One thing I think is interesting about that movie that people kind of forget about is the only time I think you ever see Bond hit M. I think he punches M, and he's a bad guy for he's a criminal for a part of 20 minutes of the movie
Yeah,
where
he's
he's
kind
on
of got
the
a little
run.
bit rogue.
He's on the run. He goes rogue. You're like, what the heck is going on here? Now, was that the last movie with M, or
M the Man M? No.
was he in the Timothy Dalton ones?
Yeah, yeah. I think he's in. But I know he's in. Is he in License to Kill? I know he's in The Living Daylights. I can't remember if he's in License to Kill.
I don't remember either. Of course, he was replaced by
Judi Dench.
Judi Dench. Yeah, the new M, I guess you could say. Okay, now let's go. Let's
Let's go
go
the other
to the
bastard.
other
Now there's two other bastard
bastard
childs, and they're
children
both
ones.
the Casino Royales.
Yeah.
And there's this original Casino Royale that almost nobody knows about. It was a made-for-TV movie, and it was in black and white. It was about 55 minutes long, I think. I mean, it's the same story as kind of the Casino Royale with the book, or
Yeah.
as in, definitely doesn't have like any Bond getting hit in the balls, and there's not really as much action. It's mostly just a long card game, is mostly what the movie is.
Yeah. Now you can talk mostly about that movie. Unfortunately have not seen that one.
Nobody's really seen it. I own it on VHS. I don't even know if they have it on DVD, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, I've never seen it.
No,
If I
it's
had,
one of those
I
ones
would
like
I would
I'm
get it.
surprised. I just really think for like a Bond collection, and like you just surprised they just don't make like the rape edition for like the man who has everything Bond. Like, why don't they put that one in there? Why don't they put Never Say Never in there again?
Yeah,
The only thing I can assume is that somebody else had different rights for those other movies.
that could have been it.
Because
Or
that's mostly the only reason why they don't ever get put together.
it could have been one of those movies that was just kind of covered up. Like, for example, with Stanley Kubrick, there was that one movie he made that he tried to buy up every single copy of it because he didn't like it very much.
And there's one like film like storage unit that has like that copy, and you have to be somebody real impressive to go see it.
And they see it like once a year or something like
Yeah,
that.
they show it like once. I think they show it once every few years.
Well, what's
too.
the name of that? Do you remember the name of that one?
I don't remember the name of that one off the top of my head.
But yeah.
But that's the original Bond movie, and that's one that like look it up. Casino Royale. I want to say it's like 1956 or 7.
Yeah.
It's a pretty darn old one.
Yeah, because
And it's totally hit. And it was made for TV, so that's I think the main reason why people also don't know about a lot too. It wasn't actually, TV was kind of invented, and it's like let's make a Bond movie.
exactly.
These books are just started to come out by that point too.
Exactly.
And then the other one's the other Casino Royale, which when I was a kid, I was watching all the Bond movies, and then I heard the Casino Royale, so I was like, they made that's actually the real first one, and I go to watch it, and it's like, oh, it's a comedy. And actually, I was really turned off by that one as a kid.
Yeah.
It's funny because you think it's like as a kid, it's like, he can like Austin Powers, but for some reason you accept Austin Powers as a comedy. But the second
Once you've seen Bond as serious, you're like, what?
yeah,
No,
and
no,
I
you
thought
can't do
Casino
that.
Royale was going to be a serious one too.
Yeah.
But now I actually look back and I kind of go, okay, yeah, I actually kind of more expected. It's got a ton of actors in it. It's got Woody Allen's in it.
That's right. It's got one of the greatest comedic masterminds of
Peter Sellers.
of all time. Peter Sellers, yes.
It's got
As Bond.
Yeah, as Bond. Well, and then it's got David Niven in it.
Yes.
It's got Orson Welles is in that movie.
Oh, that's right. He is, isn't he?
Gosh, who else? There's just a ton of people in that movie. And that's a movie where like, I think in that that's been a while since I've seen that one too. But don't they get like 7 different Bonds and stuff?
Yeah.
And it's mostly like he's just kind of like trying to hide baggage, trying to figure out who's the real Bond.
Yes.
So it's really not really Casino Royale too much.
They just kind of took the name and kind of made it its own thing. They
One
had
thing about that
elements
movie
from
was really long. The movie's like longer than all the other Bond movies, like 2.5 hours long.
How can
it's
they
like
get
a
away
comedy.
with that? Yeah, how can they get away with that in the comedy? But...
Well, comedies back in the day, they made them really long. Like nowadays, you never see a comedy extend like more than like an hour and 45 minutes. Every once in a while, maybe.
Maybe 2, but with some of the new what are those Seth Rogen movies that
They did that Funny People movie. They made that one really
yeah.
long.
And they could have cut an hour out of that movie. Anyway, so yeah, those were the 3 bastard children of Bond.
And then next we move on to these are actually my personally favorite Bond movies. I know everybody's most always the Sean Connery fan or maybe the Pierce Brosnan fan.
Oh yeah. But
And then if you're those new people, you're the Daniel Craig fan.
Yeah.
But I personally, the Roger Moore movies are my favorite ones.
They're great films.
That's the way I think I always kind of view Bond as, in my opinion, sort of.
They're very close for me. I will say I'm a Sean Connery guy, but Roger Moore is right up there with me too. He was definitely the classiest Bond. I mean, Sean Connery had that rugged,
Yeah, see, I think Sean Connery had more ruggedness, kind of had that.
that.
Well, because
women's appeal.
you get into Live and Let Die, and this is where you really realize how white Bond is.
Yeah, that's right.
That movie really points out that this guy is about, just white bread out there.
And you can definitely tell, wow, this is a 70s movie.
Well, because I got black people. The thing with that, I love that line where it's like, honky on your left. It's like, it's a black guy saying it, but it just sounds like such a
white thing, yeah. At the beginning of the movie when he's in New York just honestly feels like a scene out of Starsky and Hutch or something,
He's just running around, this like crazy white guy in a suit.
Yeah.
Looks confused.
I remember the cab driver's like, for $20, I'll take you to a Ku Klux Klan meeting. Yeah, but at the same time, that was a great movie,08 in New Orleans for part of it. I have to say, one of the funniest parts of any Bond movies in that movie, in the very beginning, where I think it's 008 or 00.
Oh, I love that movie. It has such a
005 maybe.
Bond's always the best intro. It doesn't matter
Yeah.
every single one has a great intro, but this one's got the clown.
He's there. Oh, yeah. he's there, just kind of like standing there, and then all of a
No,
sudden,
that's Octopussy. I take that back.
Octopus. No, I'm talking about the one with the guy standing on the corner in New Orleans, and watching that funeral go by, and it's really sad funeral, like someone's died, and this guy comes up to him, and the man on the corner says, "Oh, what's going on? Whose funeral is it?" And he says, "Yours." And he stabs him, and then they bring him out to the street. They put the coffin down, lift him up, and then all of a sudden the brass goes up. It's just like a New Orleans jamboree, like on Mardi Gras. That's just amazing. I think it's one of the funniest things I've ever seen in a Bond movie.
Now this one has a really cool villain. I like Baron Samedi. That is a badass character. But the only problem I have with him, I think he goes down way too fast in that movie.
He does, yeah.
At the very end, it's just like
but he doesn't die though.
he doesn't die, but it doesn't make a difference. You don't see him again, really.
Yeah, you don't see him. He just falls in the snake coffin, and that was that.
Yeah, but it's just like that. I always thought that battle could have been just a little bit cooler, or maybe a little bit longer in the end.
Yeah.
It's just that's just the only thing. It's just like you're right at the very climax of the movie, and just like boom, boom in the coffin.
And then there's the other man who's the henchman who has that claw for the arm.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, he was kind of a cool character.
No, that's the one that has that cool motorboat scene in it too, about midway.
Yes, that's right. And introduces that one redneck guy.
Yeah.
What in tarnation going on here? The cop, yeah. Great character.
He's like, I'll take along with you. What's he called? He always calls James thing.
Oh,
he's got there's like a name for him.
You're that secret agent fella, remember that?
Like, yeah, I can't remember what he
the English guy, yeah. But doesn't he live close to where we live, doesn't he? I heard he lived in like Tuolumne or lived in Columbia or something.
Really? If he does, we should go knock on his door.
No, I think he's passed away by now. But I
go knock on his grave.
I think he lived in Tuolumne County, which is pretty awesome. That's
pretty cool.
He's he's a great actor, great character.
I like that because like sometimes comedy, like like a comic relief character can be a horrible thing in a movie, but not all the time. That's a perfect example.
It works in Bond quite a bit, I've got to say. Now there's the other, of course, the main bad guy in that movie who has that pistol where you shoot something and it blows it up with air.
Oh yeah.
And then he gets shot and he looks like Fat Albert.
Yeah.
It just looks like a balloon on the Macy's Day Parade. Yeah, that was a cool ending to a Bond movie. But
I love it just explode.
Yeah. Of course, I've got to say, awesome, one of the best, if not the best Bond song, because you've got Sir Paul McCartney doing the Bond
that probably
song.
Actually is the best Bond. Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's the best Bond song. It really is.
Just about all the Bond songs are badass. But that one's such a good one.
But it was a great introduction for Roger Moore. I think it was received pretty well. And
the next one was Man with the Golden.
Man with the Golden Gun. Yeah, Man with the Golden Gun.
That's a good one.
That is a good one. Now that's an interesting movie because you have two Bond women. Maud Adams is one of the actress's name. I don't remember the other actress's name, but she's the brunette, and then there's the blonde. Goodnight wasn't the blonde named Goodnight or something like that? Yeah. And the brunette actually returns in Octopussy.
Yeah.
But that was interesting because you have that double, that triangle, that love triangle going on between the two Bond girls and Bond, which is classic Bond. You gotta love that. You've got some great enemies. My second favorite enemy, probably in any Bond movie, Scaramanga.
Scaramanga's amazing.
You know, played by
Three Nipples.
Christopher Lee.
Yep.
Christopher Lee, of course, Mr.
He's
Dracula.
yeah, now he's like in this movie. He's pretty much young and fit.
Yeah. And a lot of people don't recognize this Christopher Lee. I mean, you see Star Wars, you see him as Count Dooku, or you see him in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, or of course he played Dracula for many years on stage. But
he played Dracula in the 1979 one.
That's right. He was another one of those actors I really appreciate who did theater and film. Now he was the man with the golden gun. He would lure people to his island and put them through some sick game and shoot them at the very end. And he was also a hitman.
The challenge was he only had one bullet.
Yes, he only had one bullet. He was a hitman for hire. He charged $1 million a shot, of course.
And he only needed one shot.
He only needed one shot. That movie was based partly on his island and partly in, was it Hong Kong or?
No, that one's in Hong Kong.
Yeah, I believe so.
Because those islands are right off of China.
Yeah.
That's actually one of my favorite, like, or one of the funniest Bond parts of everything is like when Bond's in like that dojo and he's fighting, and then the guy goes to bow, and then with Bond, he just kicks him right in the face.
Kicks him right in the face. Yeah.
It's like Bond's like other like total white moment.
Exactly.
Makes him stand out like no other, even though.
It actually feels more like American, even though Bond's like English.
Yeah,
it feels like an American thing to do. And of course you've got the
like Bruce Willis thing to do. So.
Yeah. You've got the wonderful, lovable, not even a villain, kind of just like a little mischief maker,
Yeah,
knick-knack,
yeah, knick-knack, the midget, the lovable midget.
the lovable little person there. Um, Now he was Scaramanga's henchman, of course, and I remember him in the end of the movie hiding behind the bed or something, or hiding in the closet or something when Bond was making love to Goodnight, and he
He's
jumps
like
out
jerking
and
off in the corner,
jerking
like
out,
like peeking out,
yeah.
like looking, like you see Bond just like throw a pillow at
Yeah,
him.
he just throws a pillow at him. He's got his little knife in his mouth. He like tries to jump on him, like kill him. And then at the very end, they put him up in that little like wooden cage and put him up in the crow's nest of
Yeah.
the boat. So awesome. He doesn't die because he just goes to jail or whatever. But the actor
Gets
did
like prison raped, this like little man.
probably, yeah. Poor guy. He did end up passing away a little bit after that movie came out. But something else that was interesting about that movie is the uh, the flying car.
Yeah, I always thought that was really cool.
That was really cool. The flying, yeah, that was the first time you'd ever seen that in a movie before. Um, Neat concept. Now, the theme song to that movie, it had to grow on me. I thought it was a little weird at first. I'm not gonna lie, but it
I
was
like that
neat.
song. It's got cool kind of like musical arrangement to it, like the dun-dun-dun-dun-dun.
Yeah, it was. It felt like a completely new style of Bond song, in my opinion.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of true.
Now, the next Bond movie is
Spy Who Loved Me,
Spy Who Loved
that's
Me.
actually
Yeah,
probably my
yeah,
favorite Bond movie of all time. Is Spy
yeah.
Who Loved Me.
That's my second favorite. My favorite Roger Moore Bond movie.
I love that one. And actually, that's the one Bond movie that the book is completely different. There is nothing similar whatsoever.
That's right. I
That
remember
one they
that.
really just kind of went. What's the book is really just like Bond goes on. If I remember correctly, it's been so long since I read it, but he goes on like vacation.
Mhm.
Really, it's just like the most simplest story. And he's staying with like this one girl, and then people come to like attack him, and like there's just little like he's like even in a cabin or something.
Yeah, I believe that. That was the case. Now in the movie, you got Barbara Bach as the Bond villain, one of the sexiest Bond women I think in of all time, who's now Ringo Starr's wife.
Yeah.
Which is pretty awesome. And of course,
This introduces Jaws.
Introduces Jaws, my favorite Bond villain.
Best Bond
Awesome
villain there
Bond
is.
villain. I think one of the two, if I'm not mistaken, Bond villains that does not die. They had an alternate ending where he did die in the end of the movie, but they changed it because he was such an awesome character.
Yeah, people like him that much.
They went back to the Soviet Union in that movie. It was a good old fashioned, MI6 versus KGB.
So it's just classic Bond style, but they added so many cool elements to it.
They really did.
Now is that the one at the very end where like Bond's battling Jaws on the train? That's the one that happens. It's not Moonraker, right?
that's not in the end of the movie, but it's
Or not the movie. I mean, like
it's in the middle,
like
but it's in that movie. Yeah, he's
you
battling
know,
in the train.
4/5 of the movie.
And has that really scary part where he opens a closet and there's that train breaking
there.
And if you watch the special features of the Spy Who Loved Me, Richard Kiel talks about that, and he actually says that scared him the first time he watched the movie. He didn't expect that. He didn't remember shooting that, so he was like, "Whoa!" Like right when he saw that, which is pretty
Yeah,
funny.
because he's not the one editing it, so
Yeah,
he's not gonna hear those sounds.
But he didn't even remember that part being shot. Great Bond movie. Great Bond song too.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
That's probably the second best Bond song almost.
Yeah.
I don't know. They're
Carly Simon does the theme song for that one. Now, something that was interesting about that is the introduction, where it's a stuntman doing it. It's not actually Roger Moore, but when they're skiing.
That's one of those ones. Actually, my parents knew that guy who did that stunt because they were working at Squaw Valley at the time, and that guy would be skiing there all.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You mentioned that one time. Yeah, and he jumps off that huge jump, and of course could have killed himself very easily, but
he's got that great. There's that great fall, and there's like no music, just falling. Free falling.
Letting go into his
pops the parachute out.
Yeah.
Song comes there. 007 theme comes on.
Yeah, great film.
Well, somehow, some way, it looks like the podcast got cut here. So the last 10 minutes are missing. And I have no idea how it really happened. That's just how it kind of ended up. So, well, we got most of the 007 movies down. So I hope you enjoyed what you did here. And we'll always talk about Bond some other time because he's a great topic. So, always stay tuned. And thanks for listening.